Hello and welcome to Just-ok-wargamer. Raymond here, looking again at Oathmark Battle of the Lost Age. And what we're going to look at today is the creating a kingdom part of Oathmark. So this is essentially how you make your army. So there is no army lists like you might have in the old world, or Warhammer, or lots of other rank and flank fantasy games. Instead, what you start off with is a kingdom sheet, something like this, with all these weird circles in it. And these circles are different territories. These territories will then give you access to different units. So normally when you start out, you'll start off with, I think it is 9 territories to start with. And each territory will give you access to something. So it could be a dragon, or it could be heavy cavalry or catapults. If you decide to play a campaign, which I highly recommend you do because Oathmark is designed for that, you will gain more territories and access to further units or upgrades. Or potentially you could have some of your territories taken from you and you will still be able to recruit units from the territory, but they'll just be not as motivated to fight. So harder to activate. If you saw my demo game, you would have noticed I was playing with a human kingdom, and I had been using this kingdom maker here. So it is the kingdom of Mouche, with the current ruler is Renee the Cruel. So that's why he was trying to invade that dwarven homeland and take their mountains from them. So your middle territory is your capital. And that's going to determine the race of your king or queen and your prince or your princess and your general as well. So I've obviously opted for a human city. Now where I got that from is here. You'll have for each race a dwarf, a human, elf, orc and goblin. There is an underlined terrain list, but that one doesn't have a capital. And there is, in a separate one of the expansions, there's a undead one as well. So what you'll see is I've chosen the human city as my capital. It's got this bracket here, 1, and that means that the human city can only go in the first region, which is here. The second circle is your region 2. The third is region 3, and then you have region 4 out here. Now, because I've chosen the human terrain list, when I look at region 2, I can put anything with a 2 or less in there. In region 3, I can put anything with a 3 on there. Or in region 3, I could choose something from a different list, but it has to be one less number. So I could put in. So let's have a look at my kingdom that I made. So I've got the kingdom of Mouche, led by Renee the Cruel. And this is the list I used in the last demo game. And I was already getting an idea of what I wanted to field, where I was trying to look at a kind of feudal, human, Bretonian style list with virtuous knights, who, though being led by Renee the Cruel, were wanting to take over a dwarven kingdom. I also have some old Warhammer Skaven models, which I really want to play with. So I'm going to have them almost as a slave race under the humans. Maybe they're living in the moors close by, and the humans have forced them to join the fight against the dwarves, maybe promising them a new home up in the mountains, but obviously going to be paying some taxes. So with all that in mind, I start off with the human city. So the human city is what will give me access to all your command. So your king, your prince or princess or queen, general, your captains, champions, and your basic spellcaster, so level 1 or 2, and your basic troop, your soldiers, spearmen, archers, and militia. In my army, I'm going to be using some spearmen for men-at-arms and some militia as some peasant levy, okay? Then I go into region 2, and I wanted to get the plains. This gives me access to the cavalry. So this is your kind of Knight of the Realm, Knight Errant style cavalry, which I have a lot of, and I really like how I've painted them up. So I'm going to get them on the field, and they're excellent in the game. Then I've got the Barons as well. The Barons is what gives me access to Rangers, both on foot and mounted. And they're slightly better archers. They're kind of like your Yeomen, I think they're called, in Warhammer. And I've got a unit of a small mounted unit of Rangers who may come in handy, as well as a lot of Rangers on foot, who I'm kind of using as my Robin Hood men in tight style figures. And I've actually got a plan to put in a champion in one of the units to give them a magical bow, and he'll be my Robin Hood style character. So going into Region 3, this is where I start to include some of the Goblin territories, which will actually be my Skaven troops. So I have a monastery, which gives me an extra wizard, and it could be of any level. But I'll probably just put in another level 2 wizard. So I'll have 2 level 2 wizards in my list. I feel like it gives me a bit of flexibility, and I normally only go for the lower casting spells anyway, which are cast easy enough from a level 2 wizard. Going around the Iron Mines, this gives me access to your human line breakers, and your warriors. So this is going to be a heavy infantry. So I've got some foot knights who I'm going to print off and paint, and I'll use them. The ones with great weapons, 200 weapons, will be the line breakers, and the ones with sword and shield will be the warriors. The Goblin Slave Camp gives me access to Goblin Slaves and Goblin Slingers. And these will be my represented by some Clan Rats and Clan Rat Slingers that I have. They're super, super cheap. They're really not very good in the game, but it will let me put my Skaven onto the field, and I think they'll look awesome. Going to Region 4 is where I start to go a little bit further with how I'm going to be proxying some of these different territories. I have a Smithies, and this gets me the Orc line breakers. And they're very similar to the humans, except Orc line breakers have a wild charge rule. So I'm actually going to use, I've got the old school metal plague monks, who are like the frenzied rat men. So I'm going to use them to represent the Orc line breakers. And then over here, I've got a river, and that gives me access to trolls. And the trolls, I have some of the old metal rat ogre models, which are some of my favorite models. So I'm going to use the rat ogres as trolls. Then I've got this cavern. And in the cavern, it gives you access to this creature here. I don't know how to say it, a Surmus. This creature is quite tough. It's got shielding 2, a high defense value, a bit of fighting capability, and then it has a short-ranged stone gaze attack. And I'm going to use my old metal Skaven Doomwheel as my Surma. And then lastly, I've got one from the Undead list, which is only found in the Oathbreaker supplement. And this gives you access to a Wraith. Now, the Wraith is really hard to kill in combat if you don't have magical weapons. You only get 2 combat dice against it. It's got a good activation. It's got nimble, so it can move through terrain. It has horrific. And what I'm going to use that for is I'm going to use that for my Green Knight, Fey Knight type model that I have. I think that's a really good representation. And that is my kingdom. So what I'll do next is I will show you my 3,000 point army that I've made. But hopefully you get an idea of, by choosing different territories, gives you access to different units, and you can start to make your own themed army. And what you could do if you wanted to, and I shall do this, is you can start to name each of your territories. And if you wanted to, you could transfer it from these really disgusting circles and instead make something that looks more like a map with your towns and your rivers and your iron mines and everything going through it. So let's have a look at, this is now essentially my army book, which I can choose. And now let's have a go at making an army itself. So this is my army list, which I made. I normally try to make my Oathmark games around 3,000 points, which is slightly on the bigger side, but I feel like I can get most of what my kingdom has on offer in the 3,000 points, and I think I have enough models, and it looks great on the tabletop. Hopefully you get to see that soon. So I've kind of broken it up into my command units, my human units, and then kind of the Skaven, which are going to be the orcs and goblins. And all I've done is I have looked at the units which I wanted, and then they have a certain amount of points associated with them. So I've also gone and just done some names for each of the command people and each of the units as well. I think that's always fun, and then you can start to add a bit of narrative to it. And you'll see when you get into the campaign piece that your units can start to do things like earn battle honors, or you can give them special abilities like being able to make a phalanx or something, or go into skirmish formation, which is really fun. And you can also start to get legendary hero traits. So it might be that you have, Captain Sacramonte is excellent at making his men get into a shield wall or something like that. So you can adds a lot of flavor to it, which is really fun. So I started off in my 3,000 point list. I just have a princess. I don't have the king. Rene the Cruel is a bit of a coward and will send others out to do the fighting while he stays at home. So I've got Prince Marie the Fair, who is not off to a good start because she actually fled from her first battle, but she's mounted. I've got Captain Sacramonte. He's going to be leading the human line breakers. And then I've got Champion Mercer the Cheerful, and he has the golden string bow, which is why he's quite expensive, 101 points for a champion, but means in the unit that he leads, the ranger unit, they'll get to have a champion dice for their shoot attack, which in game is actually quite strong. I've got 2 wizards. I couldn't actually get 2 level 2s, so I've got Damsel Lily, who's the level 2 wizard, and then Apprentice Daisy, who is the level 1 wizard. So I just have to make sure that Daisy just gets a low level spell, because she's going to be rolling 1 dice to cast it. For the bulk of the army, I've got a unit of Knights of the Realm, I've called them, but they're just your regular human cavalry. At some point, I might play a game where I use the heavy cavalry, and then I could use my my questing knights for the heavy cavalry. I've got 14 human line breakers, who are going to be the guards of Altair, so it's going to have Sacramonte in them. I've got the Knight Errants, who are going to be on my 20 warriors on foot. I've got the Serfs, which are just the 20 militia. Mercer's Eyes, who are the 5 mounted rangers, so they can move around really quick, and they've got a little bit of shooting. And I've got Mercer's Marksmen, which is 9 rangers, so it's going to be 10 when Mercer's in there with the champion dice. And then I've got Mercer's Longshots, which is another unit of 10 rangers. So that means I've got a considerable amount of shooting in this army. But just notice I didn't go for catapults. I think the catapults are actually too strong in Oathmark. So normally when I play, I don't play with artillery unless I was going to do something special like a siege. And then to round off the humans, I've got the Men-at-Arms, which is 20 spearmen. And at the bottom, because I missed out, I've got the Knight of the Forest, who is the undead Wraith. The Orc and Goblin side of my army, which I'm going to be using as Skaven, I've got the Scab Pickers, who are my 20 slaves. I've got the No Hopers, which is 20 slave slingers. The Diseased, who will be my Plague Monks, and they're going to be 15 Orc line breakers. And then I've got the Doom Wheel, which will be represented by that Surma creature. And that comes to 2,987 points. So that's essentially the making of an army list. I didn't get to put in the Rat Ogres, but I will have a play on the army list and figure out how I can do that. I could potentially get rid of a unit of slaves and put them in, or maybe I'll just decide that we're going to be playing games at 3,250. I can put in the Rat Ogres instead. So now I've got my kingdom, I've got an army list. All I need to do next is decide if I'm going to be playing a campaign. So let's have a look at the campaign system, and then I shall have a quick discussion about my own thoughts about the whole kingdom making process and the campaign as well. Okay, so let's look at the actual campaign system itself and how that works. You have a kingdom and you have an opponent that also has a kingdom. So now you want to play a sequence of games which are linked together. This is going to make a campaign. It normally will end when someone captures the other person's capital. Sorry, mine's upside down. When someone captures someone's capital. Normally when you start playing the campaign, you'll be fighting over these outer territories. And sometimes you might be able to capture one territory, and then that might open your way to getting these ones further in. So you can work your way to their capital. You'll notice that there is 4 territories in the outer ring, which are unoccupied. And those territories are ones which you might win throughout the campaign and gain extra territories, which will get you extra units or magic items potentially as well, depending on the game you've played. The first part is you determine the battle type. And this is also going to help you determine who is the attacker and who's the defender. So you both roll a 10-sided dice. The person who rolls highest is the attacker. The other person is the defender. And what you're meant to do is you're meant to, as far as I can understand, you're meant to choose the roll of the higher die, and that's going to determine your battle type. So if I roll a 7 and my opponent rolls a 2, I'm going to be the attacker, and we're going to be playing a border clash. You then have a description of each type of battle on these 2 pages, and that'll tell you what's at stake for the game. Often it will be a open territory, so whoever wins will get to choose a open territory, or it might be that you get to occupy one of your opponent's outer borders, or something like that. Now, what I don't understand is how you're ever meant to get into a deep strike, because it's only on a roll of a 1, and you can't win on a roll of a 1. So how I've actually been playing it is we both roll a d10, whoever is the highest roll is the attacker, and then we roll another d10 to choose the battle type. And that is the system. You then just go back and forth every game you will roll, find out who's the attacker, who the defender is, and play the corresponding mission. That's the campaign system in a nutshell. Let's have a talk about what I think of the campaign system, as well as some of the issues and how you can work around them. So just some final thoughts on the campaign system itself, and maybe some ideas about how it could be improved for the upcoming version 2 coming out in August this year, I believe. The campaign system itself is fun. It's very, very narrative. It adds a lot of fluff to your army list building, and they are all great things which make for a much more enjoyable game. I have had some issues with the campaign system, mainly due to the length of a campaign. There is no designated end time. So you have your kingdom and you can just keep playing games against an opponent, essentially for an unlimited amount of games. I played about 20 games of a campaign using the system, and by the end of it, both of our kingdoms had only grown in terms of we had filled out these extra territories out here, but we hadn't really lost any of these territories. Maybe at one stage, one of us had gotten through maybe the first 2 rings and was close to getting to the capital and, getting to finish up with a big siege. But then they were fought back and then we're back to square one. I think this could be rectified quite easily just with a few little rules. So the first thing that comes to mind is you could have a turn limit. So you could say, we're going to play the campaign for 10 battles. And at the end of the 10th battle, you would see who had the most amount of major and minor victories compared to the other person, and that'd be the winner of the campaign. Another system is to look at the expeditions which are in the expansions. So over here, I've got the Oathbreaker expansion, which introduces the undead. And if we have a look up here, you have what they call a military expedition. Normally, the expansions have about 3 of these expeditions, and they range in length from 2 to 4 scenarios. I'll do a separate video where I look at each of the expansions in a bit more depth, but just thinking about the campaign system, these expeditions are lots of fun. It gives you scenarios. Some of them are just little skirmishes using smaller forces, so this is just like a little 800-point skirmish. And they can build up in size, to using a proper 6x4 foot table with 2,000 or 3,000 points per side. And there's interesting special rules for each one. I think what we have done before with Oathmark is we have played through all 3 expeditions using our kingdom, and we've had the very last scenario from the expedition as the big finale. That worked really well. It meant our kingdoms affected the type of troops we got. Normally at the end of the expeditions, you can get like a special territory, like a Farseer's Tower, which might give you access to more magic items or maybe some extra traits, which is fun. But then it also had a designated endpoint, and it meant that every scenario we played was really interesting. And normally the last scenario in these expeditions will be some type of epic battle. So, fighting over a massive hill and there's thunderstorms going off, or you have, colossal stone statues roaming amongst the armies. So there's another way where I think you could limit the amount of turns that's in a campaign and has a designated endpoint, and that endpoint is climactic. So that's it for this video today. Hope it was enjoyable. Please leave a comment about what you think about the campaign system for Oathmark and any ideas that you think could be implemented for version 2. And I hope to get the video up of the expansions for Oathmark in the next few weeks. So till then, keep on playing. Hope everyone is enjoying the videos. See you later.